So you've got out some documents for us about the Open Door Council, exploring some of the issues they were interested in and the things they were campaigning for. Could you tell us a little bit more about those, please?
Yeah, so we've got 2 documents from the Open Door Council in Britain, which was formed in 1926, and 2 documents from the Open Door International, which was formed in 1929. So the Open Door Council, as you can see from their first annual reports, their object was to secure that women shall be free to work and protected as workers on the same terms as men. And essentially that encompassed all kinds of economic inequalities in the workplace, including industrial legislation, equal pay for equal work, and work conditions. This is the report from the conference held in Berlin of the Open Door International in 1929, which explains their view on economic inequalities between men and women. Now, in particular, the Open Door Council were against protectionist legislation, so legislation that was alleged to protect women by, for instance, not allowing them to work with white lead paint pigments. They make a point of saying that they're not opposed to regulation of industry if it safeguards the health of all workers, but they were against legislation that stopped women from working in certain conditions and not men, because it devalued their work and it limits their opportunities, forcing women into lower paid jobs.
So why were only women not allowed to work with lead paint? Why wasn't this protectionist issue extended to men as well?
Interestingly, that is the subject of an essay in this issue from 1929 of The Open Door, which was the newspaper of the Open Door International. So in this essay, The Use of Lead Paint by Women, it's explained that there were regulations across many different countries that prohibited women from working with lead paint. Now, the reasoning behind this is based on a medical view that women are more susceptible to lead paint poisoning than men. Now, as this explains, the reason that women get lead poisoning more than men is actually because they're more likely to be malnourished, they're more likely to be anemic, and these are all things that are caused by poor work conditions and lower pay. And in fact, they cite a study in which men and women working under the same conditions, and in that case, men actually got more lead poisoning than the women. So it's the view of the Open Door International that this kind of legislation should be abolished, or it should be for men and women equally so that it doesn't discriminate against women. So this leaflet explains the Open Door Council's views on the National Spinsters' pensions, written in 1937. In 1935, the National Spinsters' Pension Association was formed to campaign for spinsters' pensions to be on the same terms as widows, which meant at the age of 55, they receive a pension, spinsters did not. Now, the logic behind it was that it would be more equal. There would be no discrimination between unmarried women and widows. However, the Open Door Council, as they explain in this leaflet, are actually against that. They believe that it was unjust that widows should receive pensions at the age of 55, and that if the law was changed so that spinsters did as well, it wouldn't lead to equality, it would lead to further injustice. So if we turn this over, it explains the dangers of giving spinsters pensions at 55. They note it would become a subsidy to women's wages and ultimately push women's wages further down. It would make it even harder than now for middle-aged women to get any responsible work, making it more difficult for women to get work when they were younger. And it's also based on assumptions that women get old earlier than men, which seems to devalue women and reinforce stereotypes. Now, ultimately, the pensions for spinsters is eventually lowered to 60, but still to today, there is inequality in the pension laws.